About 10 years ago, we won a competition, a sign competition, and I went down to Las Vegas to the ISA and accepted my award. And while I was there, I saw a CNC router for the first time. It happened to be MultiCam, and I remember sitting in front of it for what seemed like hours, watching it work. And in those days, multicams, and all routers for that matter, nobody was doing textures. They were all just doing flat work or cutouts. And so my big question was, what can this machine do? And so I had a lot of homework to do. Not to mention I had to convince my wife that we were going to buy this awesome and very expensive machine. I remember doing probably 50 or more phone calls all across Canada and USA. My first question to everybody I talked to, and I got their names from Signcraft magazine or other magazines, I could tell they were doing router work from what I saw. And so my big question to them is, what kind of router are you using? How are they treating you? Like, what kind of service are you getting? What kind of problems you're having with it? And also what software you're using. And so I phoned around and talked to everybody. And one name kept rising to the top, and that was MultiCam. Anyone that had a MultiCam was very happy with their dealer. They were getting exceptional service. And so ultimately we created a short list. MultiCam was on that list. They weren't the cheapest by any means, but they were the best. And so as I was making my final selection, I made a file that I knew was not very good. I knew it had problems in it, and I took it to 3 different routing companies along with a good file, and I asked them to route a sample for me to see what their machines would do. All 3 companies had trouble opening that one file. They ran the second one for me, no problem. And I remember when I was at MultiCam dealer locally, the tech was working frantically in the corner trying to figure out what to do with this file. And they couldn't solve it. Nobody could. And the next morning when I woke up, I went out to my shop, and there was a sample that MultiCam had routed for me of that corrupted file. And I was impressed because they'd worked many hours trying to get it to run. It wasn't a pretty file, which I knew, but along with it came a promise, is we will stand behind you no matter what. We bought a MultiCam, and we bought the 3000 series. In those days it was the top end router. And anyone who tells you that if you buy a router from them that it's going to run perfectly, they don't know what they're talking about. It's time to run away. There's lots of moving parts, and inevitably you will run into some kind of issue. And the important thing at that point is, okay, we have an issue, how are they going to handle it? In my case, I had 2 issues. Neither of them were MultiCam issues, but I didn't know that at the time. Our first issue is we were popping fuses. In those days, the routers didn't have breakers, they had fuses, and each time a fuse popped, it was 20 or 30 bucks, which was significant, not to mention the downtime. So they came out to try and figure out what the problem was, and eventually we decided we would test the power in our area, and it turned out the power was not very good. Our hydro company said it was within specs, but the specs were not accurate enough for our router. So my MultiCam dealer, he ordered a set of breakers for my machine, and it was a big piece of machinery. They put the breakers in, and he apologized for any trouble I had, and he did not send me a bill. Never did. That's service. When they can stand behind their machine, even though it wasn't their problem, and their primary interest was keeping me happy. A few months later, we had another small issue with the machine. About every 20th tool change, our machine would, when it was doing a tool change, it wouldn't release the tool, and it would pull it through the holder. And it wasn't consistent, and we couldn't figure it out. And so the tech came out, and he had quite some difficulty figuring it out. And eventually he did. And it turned out to be a relatively simple issue. If the machine was doing a tool change at the same time my compressor was kicking on, at that critical point, there wasn't enough air. So it was a simple matter of turning a screw, probably a quarter of a turn, to adjust the air pressure so we had just a little bit more air at all times. And again, he could have said, I'm charging you for your tech, it was your problem. But instead, no, I remember he handed me a bag of tool holders. He apologized for the length of time that it took to solve the problem, and he never did send me a bill. So 2 issues that we've had with our MultiCam, not MultiCam's problem, and yet they stand behind it. And through the years, I've developed a relationship with MultiCam. I know everyone from the president of the company on down. I attend lots of shows for them. I've met so many of their great folks, and they're a large organization. They sell machines, thousands of machines around the world. And I know for a fact that these guys all care about the company, they care about their customers, and they'll take care of them. In fact, if you were to buy MultiCam, and I recommended MultiCam to you, if you ever have a problem, phone me. I'll take care of it. I'll phone whoever I need to get that problem solved. And I know that I won't have to. These guys will take care of you. That's the kind of company they are. And so I heartily recommend MultiCam. We have 2 machines. We have a CNC router, 3000 series. That's my second machine. It's a 4-axis machine. And we also have a CNC plasma cutter, which we enjoy so much. Both machines service well. They run reliably and produce anything we can imagine. So I recommend MultiCam.